Welcome to our deep dive on the 2025 National Homelessness Snapshot. This year, homelessness reached a staggering 771, 0 people on a single night, an 18% increase from 2023. That marks the highest rate ever recorded. What underlying factors do you see driving this historic surge, Dr. Morales?
Thanks for having me. The spike is multifactorial. Rising rents, stagnating wages, and pandemic aftershocks are converging. Compounding that, nearly 1 million people became newly homeless just last year, indicating more families are one crisis away from losing shelter.
That's a critical point. Homelessness isn't just persistent, it's increasingly affecting people with no prior history. As we continue, let's unpack how these trends manifest across different regions and populations. Nationally, about 39% of homeless individuals are unsheltered, but in California, that number jumps to 66%. Why are some states seeing such stark differences in unsheltered rates?
The disparity stems from shelter availability and policy priorities. For example, New York's shelter-first approach means 96% of homeless residents are sheltered. In contrast, California faces a 218 zero-bed shortfall and strict zoning limits new shelter construction.
So, infrastructure and local governance play pivotal roles. But what about environmental or economic pressures? Is there a connection to these unsheltered rates?
Absolutely. States like Hawaii and California not only contend with high housing costs, but also climate risks, making it harder to build or maintain shelters. Meanwhile, states with lower populations like Vermont can still see sharp increases if their safety nets are fragile.
Demographic data shows Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander groups have the highest rates per capita, while Black and Hispanic populations are overrepresented. What's fueling these disparities?
Systemic inequities are at play. Historical housing discrimination and ongoing wage gaps mean BIPOC communities have fewer buffers against economic shocks. For instance, Black Americans make up about 13% of the U.S. population, but over 35% of the homeless population.
That's a stark imbalance. Have targeted policies or interventions helped mitigate these patterns anywhere?
Some cities, like Houston, have seen improvements by prioritizing racial equity in their housing-first models. But most programs still struggle to address root causes like generational poverty and access to mental health care.
Let's compare states. Hawaii leads per capita at 80.5 per 10, 0, while California has the largest raw numbers. Vermont's homeless rate shot up by 234%. What's behind such dramatic differences?
It's a mosaic of local factors. Hawaii's rent surge is partly driven by tourism and limited land, while Vermont's spike links to pandemic-era policy changes ending, pushing people out of temporary housing. California's tech boom drove rents sky high, outpacing wage growth.
Conversely, Mississippi reports the lowest rate but with 63% unsheltered. Is this a reporting artifact, or are there structural causes?
Rural states often undercount due to visibility issues. Also, limited infrastructure means those who are homeless are more likely to sleep rough, since shelter options are scarce, skewing the unsheltered percentage upwards.
There's a strong correlation between high rent and homelessness. States like CA, HI, and NY top both lists. How significant is rent inflation as a driver compared with, say, mental illness or addiction?
Rent inflation is arguably the primary structural driver. A Harvard study found that every 100 increase in median rent correlates with a 9% spike in homelessness. While mental health is critical, you can't treat your way out of a housing shortage.
That's a sobering statistic. Would broad rent control measures move the needle, or are there unintended consequences to consider?
Rent control helps in the short term, but can reduce new housing supply long term. The most effective models pair rent stabilization with investment in new affordable units and tenant protections.
Recent Supreme Court decisions now allow cities to ban public camping, effectively criminalizing homelessness in many regions. What are the practical effects of these legal shifts?
Criminalization pushes people into cycles of arrest and displacement. Data from Boise ID shows that after implementing anti-camping laws, 75% of unsheltered individuals had at least one citation, but only 8% accessed housing as a result.
Does this approach ever lead to positive outcomes, or does it simply move the problem out of sight?
Rarely positive. Cities may see short-term cosmetic improvements, but the underlying issues persist. Over time, criminalizing homelessness increases costs for policing, jails, and emergency health care, diverting resources from real solutions.
Nearly every report highlights untreated mental illness and addiction as core challenges. How do these factors create a cycle of homelessness and incarceration?
Without stable housing, it's nearly impossible to maintain mental health treatment or addiction recovery. People get arrested for minor infractions, released without support, and end up back on the streets, a phenomenon sometimes called the revolving door.
Are there models that successfully interrupt this cycle?
Yes, cities like Salt Lake City have integrated mental health services with housing-first approaches, reducing ER visits and jail bookings by over 40%. But scaling these models requires sustained funding and cross-agency coordination.
Homeless counts are notoriously unreliable, especially in rural areas. How do these data gaps affect policy and resource allocation?
Underreporting skews funding. Federal grants often depend on point-in-time counts, so rural states like Mississippi or Wyoming may receive less support than needed. Mobile app technology and community-driven counts are helping, but visibility remains a hurdle.
Could machine learning or AI improve count accuracy and outreach efficiency?
There's promising work using AI to cross-reference shelter, hospital, and law enforcement data. For example, Los Angeles piloted predictive analytics to identify at-risk individuals, boosting outreach efficiency by 30%.
Let's apply some analytical rigor. Using the PESTLE framework, which factor political, economic, social, technological, environmental, or legal has the greatest current impact on homelessness?
Economic and legal stand out. Economic pressures like rent and inflation set the stage, but legal frameworks like zoning and anti-camping laws determine how or if people get help. For SWOT, our strengths include proven housing-first models, but weaknesses are fragmented systems and data gaps.
Opportunities, then, might include AI-driven outreach and bipartisan support for veterans, while threats remain economic downturns and climate migration. Would you add any nuances?
Absolutely. Climate disasters are an escalating threat: wildfires in California, hurricanes in Louisiana, while opportunities exist in cross-sector partnerships, leveraging both public and private capital for sustainable solutions.
As we look to solutions, housing-first models have shown strong results in cities like Houston and Salt Lake City. Are these scalable nationwide, especially with a 218 zero-bed shortage?
Scaling is feasible but requires federal and state alignment. In Houston, coordinated entry and landlord incentives reduced chronic homelessness by over 60%. Wraparound services, job training, healthcare, mental health are essential to keep people housed long-term.
What about technological innovation? Could AI and mobile outreach help bridge the gap?
Yes, AI can identify at-risk populations and optimize service delivery. Mobile shelters, telehealth mental health services, and digital application portals are already making a difference, especially in underserved rural areas.
Given the urgency and complexity, it's clear that a multi-pronged, data-driven approach is our best path forward. Thank you, Dr. Morales, for this thorough exploration, and thanks to our listeners for joining us in this vital conversation.